Welcome back, everyone. I'm back here with another little video today. No Jacob once again, unfortunately. But all I really wanted to do today was, now that we are about a month or so away from the postseason, I wanted to come on here and I wanted to give some of these playoff matchups, these hypothetical playoff matchups that I'm really intrigued by, and I want to kind of dive into those hypothetical matchups that would be really fun to see, that I would really like to dig into, and I think would be really, really nuanced, would be really fun to look at from a lot of different angles. So we're going to do that here today. I've decided to exclude the top three teams in the league, which are the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Boston Celtics, just because I think those teams are far and away the favorites in all of these, which would be first round matchups. I have 5 here that I want to get into. All of these are potential first round and maybe second round matchups, but I excluded those 3 teams just because I think they are a little bit above the rest of the competition. So I did that. Some of these will be matchups that we have seen before in recent years. A lot of them will not. I tried to kind of get away from, some of the budding rivalries that we've seen. I tried to look at some matchups that might be sneaky good, might be matchups that we may not have expected to see at the beginning of the season, but are really shaping up to be really fun matchups come postseason time. This will also probably be the last video I do on this channel before the postseason begins. I'll probably come back here with the next video being like a play-in preview. The only exception that I think I would do before that would be maybe a March Madness bracket video, where I fill out my bracket for March Madness, kind of, provide some basis for my thinking behind my picks, my terribly off-base picks. But yeah, I think I'm gonna take a little hiatus until playoff time after this video. Still watching as much hoops, if not more, than I have been all season. It's been really, really fun lately. And there have definitely been some teams that have really proven themselves in this last stretch of the season. I think as we wane and get closer to the postseason, we're starting to see who is really rounding into form and who are going to be the big-time players in the postseason. So all that being said, let's get into these matchups, man. The first matchup I have here is a Western Conference matchup, which would be most likely between a 2-7 or a 3-6. And this would be Adam Silver's dream matchup. It's a media darling matchup, and that would be between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. Yeah, we've seen this matchup before. We've seen this matchup, I think, 2 years ago, where the Lakers and the Warriors met in the second round, went 6 games. Lakers took it in 6, had some inconsistencies from Jordan Poole, who was a Warrior at the time, LeBron and Steph trading some pretty big performances. And it was a fun series, all things considered. And I think this year's series between the two teams could be even more interesting. Not just because of, the additions of Luka Doncic and Jimmy Butler, which of course would add a huge other element to that series and those matchups. But I think the way the Laker defense has played lately, over the past 10 or so games, they've been the #1 defense in the NBA, which is kind of crazy to think about after trading away Anthony Davis and their starting center for most games being Jackson Hayes. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. But they've really locked in on the defensive end, and they've been really impressive. I know they lost to the Celtics last night, but before that, they have been really impressive, winning 8 games in a row, and their defense being the catalyst of it, not even their explosive, in theory, offense with both LeBron, Luka on the floor. Austin Reeves has really been great as well. But this series, I think, would be absolute cinema. It would be a media darling series. So many eyes would be on it. It'd be another opportunity to see LeBron versus Steph in the playoffs, and we don't know how many more opportunities of that we're going to get at this point. So why not? Why not give us Lakers versus Warriors? I think the way JJ Redick has been coaching lately, I think that he is a worthy adversary to a Hall of Fame coach at this point in Steve Kerr. I think that would be a really interesting chess game between those two coaches. Role players in this series, if I had to predict whose role players would step up more, I think on paper, I might go with the Golden State Warriors. I might go with the Warriors at this current time. They've been amazing too since they've acquired Jimmy Butler. I think they're 10-2 or 9-2 in that stretch. Jimmy hasn't played every game, but they have been really, really good in that stretch. They've had some role players step up too, like the Lakers in this stretch, and I think guys like Brandon Podziemski, and eventually when Jonathan Kuminga comes back, they have Kevon Looney, who has all the experience. They have so many guys that they can plug. Can Buddy Hield come in and be a spark plug, make 4 threes in the game, 4 or 5 threes in the game? I think also at this point, I don't know if I can consider Austin Reeves really that much of a role player. I mean, I guess by nature he is, and I would still consider him one. But the way he's been playing as a 20-plus point per game scorer and a real third scoring option, he's not your typical role player at this point. And I think when you think about typical role players, I think that when it gets down to it, I think Golden State's role players might have the upper hand, but it's close. It's close, and it could really go back and forth. This is a series that I think all of these series here are series that are capable of going 7 games. And this series being capable of going 7 games, LeBron versus Steph in a Game 7, something we haven't seen since the historic 2016 finals. I'm all for it, man. I'm all for it. And usually these matchups, you know, Lakers versus Warriors, they're so cliche and they're so played out. It's like, these two teams, you know, in the past, they're the big brands, you know, they get all the attention. But in this instance, I think it's rightfully so. I think they deserve all the attention if this were to be a matchup. And I would be tuned in to every single second of every single game. Another matchup here, sticking in the Western Conference, this would probably either be a 4-5 or a 3-6. I don't think this could fall to a 2-7. The way that the Western Conference is shaping up at this point is a matchup we've seen a lot this season, a lot of close games between these two teams, a lot of really competitive basketball. These are two younger teams in the Western Conference who don't have the most playoff experience. One team has a little more than the other, but I think it would be really interesting stylistic contrasts with these two teams on the floor. It's the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Houston Rockets. I was trying to decide who I wanted to pit the Memphis Grizzlies up against in one of these hypothetical matchups. And I decided to go with the Houston Rockets, partially because we haven't seen this playoff matchup before with the Grizzlies this iteration of the Grizzlies going up against this current iteration of the Houston Rockets. Whereas we have seen them go against the Warriors, the Lakers, the Timberwolves, teams like that. So I think with this being the first time for a lot of the Rockets' young players being in the playoffs, the Grizzlies have the upper hand experience-wise in this series, which they probably won't have against a lot of other teams. This series would be interesting because who would step up? You know, who would be the number one guy? A lot of this season for the Grizzlies, it has not been Ja Morant. It has been Jaren Jackson Jr., and of course, some nights, you know, it'll be Desmond Bane, but they're a very by-committee team. And the Houston Rockets are the same way. You know, some nights it's Alperen Sengun, some nights it's Jalen Green, some nights Amen Thompson is the best player on the floor, and even if the box score doesn't always reflect that. Fred VanVleet been very inconsistent this season, but can he, you know, show up with his championship prowess and, you know, be a guy who leads that team in the playoffs? You have the contrast of Memphis's pace, Memphis's explosive pace with their unorthodox offense where they don't use very many high ball screens. They don't use very many ball screens. They use a lot of attacking the gaps and cutting action against a very stingy Houston defense that really locks down those gaps and really has presented some problems for the Memphis Grizzlies in their matchups this season and to a lot of other teams as well. Who owns the glass in this series? These are the two, as it stands today, the two teams in the NBA that lead in rebounding. It's Memphis leads in defensive rebounding, and Houston leads in just total rebounding in general. And even though Memphis leads in total rebounding, I think that's more, a testament to their pace more than their actual ability to defensive rebound, because they've had some games lately where they've given up some offensive rebounds and second chance points. So yeah, who owns the glass in this series? We know that Zach Edey is a rookie, and he'll be going up against Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams. You've got that element of the series too, with Steven Adams and Dillon Brooks being a part of it, as former Grizzlies, and Dillon Brooks especially being a pest to Desmond Bane in a lot of the games that they've played. So this series could be fun. Which coach shows up? We know Ime has been to the highest level before with going to the finals with the Boston Celtics, and he's a really fantastic coach. Taylor Jenkins is as well. I know he's made some questionable decisions late in games, especially of late, and he has kind of his drawbacks with a lot of people. But Taylor Jenkins is a good coach. He's a very, very smart coach. But these are two young teams. A lot of energy, a lot of effort being exerted on the floor. Very fast-paced for Memphis especially. I would love to see the Grizzlies and the Rockets in the first round. And if I were to pick one team right now, I would probably lean with the Grizzlies just based on the caliber of their top guys and the fact that they've been there before in the playoff time and showed up, especially Ja Morant. So I'd probably lean Grizzlies. In that first matchup between the Lakers and the Warriors, I'll probably lean Lakers right now. I know I said the Warriors would probably have the role player edge, but I think that Luka Doncic really just puts the Lakers over the top in that hypothetical series. But I'll go Grizzlies in this second series. Both great first round series. And the way that would line up, the winner of both of those series would play each other in the second round. So that would be another fun matchup as well. But moving to the Eastern Conference, I have two matchups here where there would be 3-6 or 4-5 matchups, either one of these two. The first one I want to get into is the matchup between the Milwaukee Bucks and the New York Knicks. We know that Jalen Brunson is going to miss some time with the ankle injury he suffered the other night against the Lakers, unfortunately. And Milwaukee is surging, so Milwaukee could potentially take the higher seed in this series, although the Knicks sit as the 3 seed right now. But this would be a really, really fun series, I think. Giannis and Dame being in their second year, they're really starting to put a lot of the pieces together. They're playing well off of each other. They're the highest scoring duo in the league this year, both top 10 in scoring. They've got some pieces around them that I think are better suited than they had last season. I think the addition of Kyle Kuzma, I know I got on here and said I don't know how much it impacts winning, but I think it would be good for this series in particular, where the Knicks have their wings with OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. And I think Kyle Kuzma, maybe not as a total offset to those guys, but I think he could be impactful in making up a lot of the production that OG and Mikal give from the wing position from the New York Knicks. But this would be a series, too, where the starters of both teams would play big minutes, in theory. We know that for the Knicks especially. But for the Bucks, too. The Bucks bench is not very deep. We know Bobby Portis, is on his suspension right now, but he will be back by playoff time. Outside of Bobby Portis, who's giving you consistent production off the bench for the Milwaukee Bucks? Is it AJ Green? Is it Gary Trent, who's been better of late? So it'll be interesting to see who steps up off the Bucks bench and the Knicks bench. Of course, you've got Deuce McBride, who's done some really good things in the playoffs before. Cam Payne has been very turbulent and polar in the playoffs with his time with the Suns and with the Knicks and with the other teams he's played for. Landry Shamet has had some playoff time. Mitchell Robinson just came back. So the Knicks are starting to, outside of Jalen Brunson now, kind of starting to round into form. But you would expect to see the starters play big minutes in this series. And when Giannis has been matched up with bigger teams before, think of the Toronto Raptors, think of the Boston Celtics and the times that they've played them. A lot of times he sees the wall. Teams like to deploy the wall against Giannis. And with Dame on the floor, with Brook Lopez being, a great stretch option now, Kyle Kuzma able to shoot the 3. Can the wall be as effective as it has been before? And I think that the Bucks can kind of exploit that better now than they ever have been able to. So we'll see. We'll see if that, comes into play come playoff time. Who is the better point guard in the series, Jalen Brunson or Damian Lillard? I know that's been a topic of a lot of discourse with who's the best point guard in the Eastern Conference. And even though I'm the big Dame guy, I would say over the past couple of years it's been Jalen Brunson, pretty obviously. But in a playoff series, we know those things can change. We know those things can shift. Just think about Anthony Edwards' Devin Booker discourse. I was the big Devin Booker guy, and Anthony Edwards showed last year that, hey, I'm here. I'm that guy. And quickly, I had to shift Anthony Edwards to my number one shooting guard. But yeah, that would be a very interesting matchup between Jalen Brunson and Damian Lillard. I'd be really interested to see who kind of takes precedence in that matchup. And I think the three-point shooting, more so in this series than any series that I have on this list, is so important for this series. Who can be the most efficient three-point shooting team? And I think it will come down to a lot of the wing players and the bigs between Karl-Anthony Towns and Brook Lopez, two of the best stretch bigs in the game, who can hit their threes the most consistently and give their team an advantage in that aspect of the game. This other Eastern Conference series, though, the other 3-6 or 4-5 series, the Pistons are a team that I'm excited is in the playoffs, and I was really trying to figure out which matchup I like them in the most. And I think I like them in the hypothetical matchup against the Indiana Pacers the most. I also didn't want to pit the Indiana Pacers up against the Bucks or the Knicks because they played both of those teams last year and their budding rivalry, so we kind of seen it in recent past, but would still be a great matchup, regardless. But I wanted to see what I thought about the Pacers versus the Pistons in theory. And I think this, like that Grizzlies-Rockets series, would be another series with two pretty young teams. I think obviously the Pacers have the experience advantage, but this would be a fast-paced series, two teams that like to get up and down, two high-scoring teams. You've got two great point guards, two other Eastern Conference great point guards with Cade Cunningham and Tyrese Halliburton. So I think from a star perspective, it's very dynamic. This series could shift because these are two guys who can often be the detriment of their own team with turnovers, with inefficient shooting, more so with Tyrese Halliburton, and turnovers more so with Cade. Can the Pistons limit those turnovers? Can Tyrese Halliburton show up consistently on the offensive end and knock down shots and get guys open at the same time? Malik Beasley has been a guy who has been transcendent shooting the ball this season, his best year of his career in terms of volume and efficiency, where he is on a record-shattering pace up there with Steph Curry to be one of the only guys in NBA history to shoot over 40% from three on, I think it's over 10 attempts a game from three, which is insane to think about. I believe that's the stat. It's along those lines. But Malik Beasley has been insane this season. You've got some young, really gritty defenders in this series with Asar Thompson and Andrew Nembhard and Ron Holland, who may not play a whole lot. You've got Aaron Nesmith. You've got some vets like Tobias Harris and Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner. Got a young big with Jalen Duren. There's so many different pieces in this series who can really be X factors. I can't, in this hypothetical matchup, I can't point out just one guy. I feel like it would have to be a collection of guys for a team to really give one of these teams the advantage. But I think this series would be a series that could go 7 games. I think it would be a lot of fun. And against whoever comes out of that other matchup between the Bucks and the Knicks, if I had to pick today in that Bucks-Knicks matchup, I might pick the Bucks. I might go with the Bucks, and I would probably pick the Bucks in a matchup between the winner of Pacers-Pistons. But this would be a really fun first-round matchup, and I would really look forward to all of the games of that series. The last one I have here is, getting back to the Western Conference, is the Denver Nuggets versus the LA Clippers. And this was the matchup. I knew the first 4 matchups were matchups that I would have. I wanted to include a 5th matchup, and I was trying to figure out who I wanted it to be. And I think I want it to be the Nuggets and the Clippers. I had this matchup on my list last year for a potential series. And I think with the addition of Russell Westbrook to the Denver Nuggets, I think that would be a very interesting caveat to this series. How impactful would he be? Can he continue his great play in the regular season? Can Norman Powell stay hot? Norman Powell has been one of the best stories in basketball this year. My pick for most improved player as of right now. Can he stay hot from three? Can he continue his torrid pace scoring the ball? You know, you've got some guys who are inconsistent in the playoffs with James Harden. You've got Jamal Murray. You've got Michael Porter Jr. You've got, I almost said Paul George. You've got Kawhi Leonard, who his inconsistencies are because of, missed time. But you've got a lot of factors at play here. Zubac has done a good job in the past of providing at least resistance to Nikola Jokic. Can he provide enough resistance to give the Clippers a real chance in this series? I think obviously most of us would take the Nuggets as the favorite in this series. That makes this series different from the other four that I've featured so far. I think that there would be a clear favorite in this series, and it would be Denver. But I think the way the Clippers play, the way that they, dig in on the defensive end, the way that they rebound, they are actually the number one defensive rebounding team in the league. Can they control the controllables that usually Denver has the edge over other teams on? And a lot of that comes down to resistance against Nikola Jokic and limiting Jamal Murray. Because I think more than any other team, especially out of all the teams mentioned here, maybe it becomes more of an argument with the top three teams. If Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray are playing not even their best basketball, but if they're playing playoff level basketball by their standard, none of these teams on this list are messing with the Denver Nuggets, in my opinion. I think they've shown that up until this point. They have won the championship with this core. And I think they've got, even with their depth not being what it once was, I think that they've got all of the core pieces still to make that kind of run happen again. And if there was a team to give the Oklahoma City Thunder a test in the Western Conference, I think it's the Denver Nuggets. I know a lot of people have started to, question, can it be the Lakers? Can the Lakers give, the Thunder a good fight? And I think they could. I think the Warriors possibly could too. But I think Denver still is, poised to do that the best. And those two teams played today, and Oklahoma City kind of ran them out of the gym in the fourth quarter. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 40 points in that game. But I think with the Nuggets, experience, and I think with their offensive firepower, they provide the best, and their continuity should not be, swept under the rug either. They've got the tools. I think they're best equipped to topple the Oklahoma City Thunder if there was a team to do that. But the Clippers are not an afterthought. The Clippers are by no means an afterthought. Like myself and a lot of others thought they might be in the preseason. They have overachieved this season. They have been a really fun team to watch, especially when James Harden is hot and he's got it going, especially when Kawhi is playing, to the level that we know that he can play. They're a fun team. They're a really fun team. So I would like to see this series. And like many others, I would still lean with the Nuggets, but I think the Clippers could give the Nuggets a good fight in the first round series. But yeah, as the season wanes, I'll be, over the next couple of weeks especially, I'll be maybe giving more of an emphasis to college basketball. I'll still be tapped into NBA though, of course. But I'm excited. I'm excited to get to April. I'm excited to get to May and eventually June. But, I'm excited to be in the moment as well, seeing which teams kind of, fill their roles in the pecking order, to see which teams rise, to see which teams may play for matchups, if that's a thing or not. I like to, give my theories about that. But it's all getting really fun. My Blazers are still in it, technically, so that's fun for me too. And I'm more excited for this playoffs than I have been in a little while. At least last playoffs for sure. Maybe 2 years ago I was pretty excited, but this year's playoffs I'm really, really stoked about in theory, and I think that they can be really, really fun to see if these teams like OKC and Cleveland are really legit. I'm excited to see what narratives kind of show forth, and I'm excited to just cover it from an objective perspective and to watch the great hoops. You know, I was watching that Lakers Celtics game last night, and you know, we say all the time, like, you know, enjoy LeBron, he's not going to be here for much longer, but watching LeBron in that game, and I know he went out with an injury, and they ended up losing that game. But man, we're not going to get to see LeBron against the Celtics very often anymore. Like, those matchups are few and far between now. So I was watching that game last night, and I was just like, man, this is really like, I gotta cherish this. You know, I gotta really be in the moment, and I think that's the way that we should be with all this basketball that we're consuming, especially at this time of the year where things become a lot more high stakes and the competition just amplifies to another level. So yeah, I thank y'all for watching this video today. Let me know if y'all want to, what matchups y'all are excited to see in theory, what matchups y'all want for your teams, whatever it may be. Let me know. I always like the discourse, like the back and forth. So yeah, thank y'all for watching today, and I'll sign out for now. I'll see y'all with NBA talk in about a month or so. Might get back on here for March Madness. We'll see. But if not, I'll see y'all then. Peace out.